Loophole to happiness. And we're talking today about a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And I figured we'd start off just with sort of a basic outline, right? Run-of-the-mill stuff. I know you live a nomadic life. You've met a ton of people. And so right now you were telling me you're sort of processing everything that you've been taking in over the years, right?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you just, like I was telling you earlier, it's like I've kind of, because I'm a music documentarian, so I've kind of been all over the world, literally, like with pop bands and rock bands, and been to 38 countries, you know.
Jeez.
And so with that life experience, like, just every day there's just so much experience. Like a week on tour can feel like 6 months and years somewhere. And so if you just think about how much data you take in, like when you're on the road like that, I think I'm 35 now, I've been doing this for 10, 15 years now, and it's just, I think, the time in my life where I just really seeing the value and just processing all that information that I went through, you know, and continually going through it, you know. Yeah.
Well, and I do like how you basically funneled some of that into your book, mm-hmm. and sort of given us a sense of what those years have given you in terms of perspective. And I did want to share my favorite one because I think it's super relatable. And for me, I didn't have the words for it until I saw it here. Imagine not knowing.
Yeah.
I mean, what's worse, right? Whenever you're confronted with the situation where you need to take a risk. Diving in, possibly failing, possibly succeeding, or not knowing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or having that forever drone in the background saying, well, what would have happened? What would have happened?
Yeah, for
right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I call it, I think a tool we can use in our brain is called strategic ignorance.
Oh.
And so, like, I put everything into Loophole to happiness. Like, I worked on it for 8 years, fully leveraged myself, fully cashed out, got investors, put money into it, and then no, like, immediate, like, reward. And the second line of the book is expect nothing, accept everything. And I fell for that as I'm releasing this book. It was just almost a romantic story because I was so down when I released this book. I was in the struggle of my life.
Oh,
because
okay.
I was the first time in my life I'm broke. I didn't have enough money to fill gas in my tank. But I put everything into it. I jumped off of a cliff. You know, but I knew that I had to, and there was parts of my life that I used what I call strategic ignorance, where I actually blocked out these things, and this is a risky behavior.
So basically, all of the bad voices, you eschewed them. You said, right. You're going to take the leap of faith, using your analogy of the cliff, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And you know, it's just what you do. I mean, what are you going to do if you didn't do that? I've been working on this for 8 years. I had to. Now it's 10 years I've been working on this project. And all the other projects I'm working on, really about Loophole to Happiness is an operating system for your mind. So it uses the metaphor of a computer to understand the way we think. And so metaphors evolve as we conceive new concepts. And this new metaphor of a computer is so new that no one's ever been able to write a philosophy that literally you can read in 10 minutes. Because we have a framework of an understanding, a popularized understanding of this. If one line can change a life, a collection can reprogram it. We have that metaphor,
right.
And that's what all of Loophole to Happiness is. The next book I'm working on, it's called Thought Waves. So if Loophole to Happiness is an operating system for your mind, this is the first application.
Nice. Okay.
And then one of the next is inner space development, and it's like Loophole to Happiness, but it articulates these concepts with visuals. And so it's like, because sometimes words, we don't quite have them yet. But there's concepts like cycle of expectation I'm working on, I'm really excited about. Because to me it understands, like, addiction, sadness, love, everything in one little chart. And so it's like, and I can even vocalize it, but visuals help so much more. You know what I mean? If you just see this visual, it's like, show me.
Right.
You know, and it's like, it's interesting. I was thinking about language the other day and how, and shapes, they actually mean themselves. Like, if you draw a circle, it means a circle. You know, things like that.
Right, they're transparent. Circle, right. It's a circle.
Right. And that's one of the things I'm writing about is words. Like, evolution of the agreed upon grunt. So we agree this grunt means this thing. And so I've been thinking about just what were the first words? Like, how did we organize, like, when we were, like, trying to work as a group? and what were the first things we actually vocalized. So it's like attention's probably one of the first ones. It's like literally
Right, and that does carry on today, right?
And they say, when did names start? When did we have so much value? And when did that series of events happen? So who were named first? Okay, the important people, or the important people of the tribe were named first, and then that's how caste systems happen. And then you just like start to. It's so funny when you really do thought experiments and think about, like, as a species, why do we use words? Why do we use metaphors? And then, like, metaphors is another thing I'm working on. I'm kind of going all over the place, but metaphors are the hyperloop of thinking. It's like, if this is like this, is like this, you say so many things. And so that's kind of my, like, metaphors, alliteration, all these things, and that's why every one of these lines I use, like, I call it advertising techniques on yourself. So it's like, I advertise this perspective to you using words that are kind of catchy.
Well, you can go on a real tangent, though.
Right.
I mean, look at the profundity of
one
just...
of the lines of the book is allow tangents.
It does say allow tangents.
Yeah.
I'm a little guilty.
Which some kinds get a little out of, like a couple weeks ago,
Guilty.
I needed to work on a project, and I just kept going on these tangents. I was like, and then I started thinking about thought redirection. I was like, okay, how can I get back here? But I just it was just But
sometimes things, they
there's
require
a time
that.
for everything.
Right,
For sure.
right. They require that sort of passion. They require that sort of, drive to
Right.
push the point across.
Right.
And so I get that. And I really love how you're going to be integrating your photography to the next work on the inner space.
Oh yeah.
To sort of communicate, but through pictures.
Well, it's actually graphs. So it looks like almost like old school, like military posters, and they're just like very simple. It's black, white, and red, and so those are the only three colors that are used. So it's a very similar aesthetic to Loophole to Happiness, but with graphics. I'll show you some later.
Wicked, yeah, no, I definitely want to see, because I'm going to be all over it. And so I'm definitely curious on your perspective of, I know this is very specific, but there is a reason, on your perspective on wealth and how it affects happiness. Where I live right now, I live modestly, and I think there's always that drive, right, in our culture. We're sort of based in productivity. We always want to do the best that we can, get the highest position, attain the highest status. But it's a little bit scary, right, when you hear of certain bands and certain band members in the mass media who sort of met tragic ends despite their wealth, despite their fame, despite the adoration. What has been your experience with that? I mean, it kind of goes back, I think we mentioned somewhere here, the importance of having a balanced life. Or maybe we talked about it beforehand. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I've never, I feel like, all the challenges you get in your life are there or you can see them as there for a reason. And so, like I was saying earlier, like this about 6 or 7 months ago, or I guess earlier this year, like it was the first time in my life I had infrastructure stress. My security was threatened. As an animal, I was scared. I didn't know what to do. And so when that infrastructure stress is so hard to bypass, it tested what I was thinking in this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
and
I
so
believe it.
It's so stressful, but then you adapt, because we're so adaptable as humans. But one of the traps of society and media and everything is the comparison. It's like you look at poor countries, they're all relatively the same, but we compare. That's how we get better. We use examples to get better. And that can be hacked by just, look at their house, look at how green their grass is.
Right, suddenly your achievements, you go, no, I gotta keep going because this
that's
isn't
why
enough.
comparing is not an accurate assessment.
Which I remember.
And it's not. So it's just like my whole philosophy about money is currency. Currency is a vibration. It's through us. And it's an accelerator to make things happen faster. My entire philosophy is if you just pay your bills, figure out that's the goal. Almost the first goal of just flipping things around. Start paying your bills.
Survival.
Then
Base.
you can live like a king. It's like you can feed yourself. Like if you can just get to that point of survival, and then when you get to that point of survival, then it's just like everything is just fantasy world. Do you know what I mean?
Right, because what else can you get? Right, it's gonna be bigger house, better car.
I'm not as broke as I was 8 months ago right now, but I'm not. I still think about every dollar I spend. But because of that, it's like if the generations that went through the Depression, it made them change their perspective on how they spent their money. It made them change their perspective about how they treat their things. Like I have, like I got a Prius for this tour I'm about to go on, and I painted it flat black, and I'm just so thankful for it.
It looks
and
pretty
I
dope.
treat that thing like so special, because the last car I got T-boned. And so, but, you know what I mean? So it's just like everywhere I park, how I clean it, I keep it so tidy. It's because I care about it so much more, because the value of it, if something happened to that thing, it's a big deal.
Right.
And so, but the reality of that hit me a few months ago. And now, the rest of my life, if I have $1 billion, I'll look at it differently.
But it makes sense though, right? Because if you have money, you're not as concerned. Something goes wrong, scrap it all together, sprinkle some money on the dealership, and we'll get another car.
But then
everything's replaceable.
Right, but what's interesting is value is placed differently. And so value isn't as much in a group. I was talking to an extremely wealthy person, like inherited, like in the billions, I think.
Oh wow.
And he was talking about the challenge that most people don't talk about is the rich kid growing up. And like, he's not trying to pity party, but
I've heard of
it's the
this,
same
yes.
as Justin Bieber. It's that there are challenges to be put there. And it's like, when you don't have anything to, like, all your friends around here are just trying their best to figure out how to pay their bills. And like, you don't have that motivation necessarily, unless it comes somewhere from your upbringing or inside you somewhere or something. You don't have to do anything. You know, there's a challenge to nurture ratio in life. And like, that's a challenge to nurture ratio plus time and experience, I think, is what makes your personality. And so whenever you're extremely wealthy and you don't have any challenges in life, you become the people that we don't like. Because behavior is encouraged is the one to continue. And so when you're encouraged to just literally get everything you want anytime you want it, you know, it's funny, like I thought this is a kind of a gross example, and I can't believe I'm about to go here. But
Let's
one of the
do it.
first times
Dive
that I partied with my friends when I was, I don't know how old I was. But it was the first time I was away from my house, away from my mom, that I threw up. And it was there was a split second where I was looking around expecting someone else to clean my throw up. Nobody noticed this split second, but I was like, all my life someone had cleaned up my throw up. And so that can be applied to everything else.
It can.
Some people just don't know that they're supposed to clean up their throw up. And it doesn't click that they should, because all their life somebody's come behind them.
They haven't had to develop that consideration.
Really
right,
horrible
right.
example, but yeah.
No, it makes sense though.
Yeah.
It definitely makes sense, because you're right. There's something to be said, and I think to bolster your point, a good relatable example might be school, right? When a student enters the workforce, and now suddenly, instead of them being pampered and the teacher looking out for them, they have to apply. You have to get in line with however many people, and it can be cold, right? Because if you can't make it, well, there's 10 others behind you.
Right.
40
others
others
sweet
behind
spot
you.
for every one of us, that challenge and nurture ratio. And like, if I ever am able to have kids, if I ever have kids.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the things I want to concentrate on, is like, I want to push them in the right times, And I think now, like, parents have the advantage. Like, I have, my sister just had an incredible child, and so it's cool to have that animal feeling of like, I would do anything for this
Kinship, right? You feel.
it's so weird. Like I was over at her house a couple days ago, and I was holding Cooper while my sister ate, and one of his cousins blew a thing in his face, and like I got so protective over.
And it was just a primal thing. It sounds like.
I was
right?
like, what are you doing to my nephew here? It was so interesting, like, to feel that, like, but I love it. I'm so thankful for my sister for having a baby, because it's a beautiful feeling.
Oh, yeah. It's something I sort of look forward to as well. And my family sort of aged to a point where we don't have the kids around anymore. But yeah, there's something to be said about that, right? That sort of primitive, ingrained sort of substructure that we still retain today.
Yeah, it's evidence of our animal, is what I call it.
Yeah,
we got love, we have emotions, and that's one of the biggest differences between us and like AI. I think is like we use emotions in our memory system, so we have trauma because we need to remember that memory so it doesn't happen again.
Right.
And so that goes haywire. If you don't understand what that is, otherwise it's just torment. you know. But if you realize that this is just our memory system, and then he uses that emotion, that thought for a reason, you know, it's like, because these are you remember things, and forgetting is just as important as remembering, I think. But yeah.
So in certain circumstances, right? Basically, the trauma. I don't want to say it's a good thing, but it's protective because it reminds you.
For sure.
Of a
It's
bad
just like
scenario.
sweat. It can be annoying, but it's helping you.
I see. Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's interesting how the body works. Sometimes it can speak to and it knows itself better than even your mind can sort of put into words.
Oh, sure. We're just trying to make sense of it up here. I mean, our body is like just doing its thing.
It's something I try and focus on meditation. I don't know how big you are into that. I don't know if you've done sort of a guided meditation or anything like that to sort of help.
I've done quite a bit of that kind of stuff. I kind of got into the energy healer community.
Cool.
Really, when I was going through my divorce, I was married for exactly 4 years, and when I was going through it, instead of seeing a counselor, because I'm just a little out there. And for me to hit 0 with a normal counselor or anybody
I knew what you mean. I
it
could
would take a
relate.
few sessions. And so I was like, what if I just go see this energy healer and I'll just have her hug me and tell me she loves me, and then we'll like talk about metaphors, which is what I got from that community. Is like I feel like there's a lot like in that community that, you know, the branding of it is just, you know, it actually makes people not want to go there. Because it's so hippy-dippy and it's all that kind of stuff.
So it's just the exterior.
So that's why then one of the next book I'm working on is called Inner Space Development. And so instead of saying go meditate, say go develop your inner space. It's like it feels different to say those things. And then that's the one with the visualization exercises, which is kind of my interpretation of meditation or thinking, you know, or, you know, in visuals and just like really exercising your brain. It's because like thinking, you can practice thinking and you get better at it. Like I feel smarter than I used to be, and I've been deliberately practicing thinking. And
right.
It's like,
Learning to learn.
It's a 10,000 hour rule. Are you familiar with this?
Sure am.
And so 10,000 delivered hours, you can become great at anything. And so that equals about 4 hours a day for 10 years. And I think that if once your first 10,000 hours hits, I think it kind of gets shorter for every skill that you try to get great at. You know what I mean? Because you can apply these skills to skills. And a lot of being really good at stuff is fundamental. It's rudiments. And then everything else is built off of it.
Oh, and you know, it's interesting you say that because I kind of feel like culture follows a similar pattern to what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to achieve sort of that zooming out, right? Because it's sort of like we question things in politics or in life, and we get super specific, and then suddenly we hit that wall. And we go, you know what? Let's take a step back.
Yeah.
And things start to go back a little bit, right? And then we end up perhaps at a more enlightened and new perspective.
Yeah. And it's always important to remember every one of those perspectives, but like that's kind of what I feel like I do when I really go by myself, and because when you're around people socially, you can't go in your brain like you can when you're by yourself. And I just like to be by myself. Like I went out to my family's ranch for 30 days by myself last year. And it was one of the most productive thought periods of my life, you know, and you can just really go into just these crazy, you know, I use the metaphor of a museum whenever I describe what an idea is. Because like a museum, you can know about it, you can drive by it, you can not know about it, you can go inside, you can go in the bathroom in it. you can, like, and so you can, I feel like I've been, every idea, I try to just go in this museum as much as I can. You know, and that's kind of what I try to do when I'm on my own, you know, and I feel like, I don't know what it is, it gives me this, like, you know, coming back to what you're saying, it gives me this, like, 30,000 foot perspective on things, and then when I can come back, I feel like, and sometimes I'm a little clunky coming back and being around people, but I feel like I get something from it, and then I share what I've been doing with people, and they respond to it, and so, in that talk about encouraged behavior, that's natural selection, I've been encouraged to continue.
I see.
You know, and so you know, now because during this 8-year process of writing this book, I definitely lost touch with reality a couple times. Because when you go that deep, you can, one line, just lose self-defined self. It's like definitely got a little confused for a second, just what reality was.
It was a big project, yeah. I mean, when you look at the content,
yeah,
you see that you're touching on some pretty profound things. This isn't, you know.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I remember writing it, but it doesn't feel like I wrote it. It's a very strange feeling.
Oh.
I use it more than I feel like I spent time writing it, even though I wrote it for 8 years. But I read it every day. Like, their books, like, that's one of the first draft copies.
Okay.
Over there, I give, like,
Wicked.
and it has a black spiral on it. And
Okay,
and
okay.
then that's one of the first drafts, or the first actual final drafts. And that doesn't have my name on it. I eventually want to take my name off of it again. Because I just think it's cool without a name on it.
Oh, that's an interesting touch. No, that's an interesting touch.
But they said the bookstores and everything needed to have a name on it.
Oh, okay. I see. And I do love the format, how it is sort of it's art.
Thank you.
It's art. And I don't know if you're familiar with authors sort of like Tao Lin.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It reminds me of that aesthetic. Obviously, Tao Lin does other things, but it reminds me of that aesthetic. It's art, and you're expressing things in a manner that's not standardized.
Thank you. Yeah.
So that's how it felt to me, going through it. Yeah, it's. I'm trying to take it all in. It's interesting because where I live now in Denison, Texas, they take a lot of pride in local art. It's sort of, you know, sort of a modest town. I don't know if it's relatable at all to your hometown. I know you had lived sort of in Killeen.
Well, actually, Bolton.
Belton, right? It's sort of close by, right?
Yeah, it's right next to.
I looked it up on Google.
So no, my family's ranch is near Killeen, and then but I grew up in Bolton, Texas. Went to Bolton High School, but then I came to Dallas in about 2001, so I was playing drums in a band.
Cool. Okay.
And, so I was up here for a couple years, and then I started working for a publishing company when I was no longer with the band, and I worked there for a few years, and you know, I was kind of did magazines, and I did cosmetic dentists after pictures. So it makes you. That was the first thing I started traveling, shooting portraits of these people who just had an $80,000 full mouth reconstruction, and so I'm in a room with these people that have never had a smile before, but they have to figure out what a smile is. Like, smile is pure. When you smile without thinking about it, it's pure.
Whoa.
But when you say 1, 2, 3, smile, it's a skill that literally you figure out how to do when you grow up and you don't think about it. But when you see an 80-year-old man he's modified his smile to cover up his teeth all his entire life. Now he has a beautiful, you know, $80,000 mouth. And so now his son is teaching him, like, pulling his mouth forward, trying to just show him how to smile. That's just one example, but when you think about just little things like that, that's what the camera does. It gives you opportunities to see these parts of almost, I don't even want to say vulnerabilities, but, you know, lack of a better term.
Right.
And like when you shoot celebrities to beautiful women to, you know, your close friends' weddings. You know, which is, I don't shoot weddings, but I'll shoot my close friend's wedding. I love to do that. But when I do that, I mean, I'm sharing moments. Like one time, a good friend of mine that actually played in my band, him and his wife, Aaron and Megan, I was like one of the sole witnesses to their wedding. We flew up to Oregon. It was right in the middle of Oregon and Washington. This industrial size, just like ravine with a river and waterfalls everywhere. And I was their entire family, other than her aunt and uncle who were witnesses, saw the entire hike, 45 minutes hike to the waterfall. In the ceremony, I was the ring bearer. I shot the picture of me giving him the ring. And it's just like you think about, when you take pictures and you go back and look at them, it's like you see it so much different. And it's like, I'm so thankful for the tool of, you know, photography, because it just allows us to frame just a split second. And then you can come back 2,100 years later now, and then you can just, like, you know, live what that moment was just in a little bit.
It's true, yeah, because when you digitize something, I mean, you immortalize it.
Yeah, I mean, and we're a new species.
Practically speaking, right.
Kind of part of what I'm doing with my entire, like, I call it my opus, is proclaiming and branding the next era of our species.
Oh. Which, it's an avant-garde thing, though, because...
That's how the Renaissance era was done. It's just proclaimed and branded. Who does it? The one that does it the loudest and the best. And so I want to eventually start, you know, becoming conscious era with artists. like, and then that's how you define an era with the art. But just to identify and articulate that we are a new species, but it's happened at such a gradient in our lifetime so fast, we don't realize what is even happening. And that's what I feel like my perspective when I think is like, I consider the things that I'm about to say, it's just like, we're a new species now. We don't just leave skeletons, we leave digital skeletons as well now. We have a next opposable thumb. The internet's just as organic as we are. And so it's just as if it's part of our evolution. And people don't realize it's like
no, but it's a good point because and I can see why it hasn't been realized yet because technically it hasn't, right?
They say when the ships were sailing over the Americas, the only people that saw them were the shamans, because they just don't have a reference of what these things, these shapes are. They don't know what it is, you know. And it's.
But it makes sense.
Yeah.
And a specific example would be when we become, let's say, mature in age, right? Have grandkids, hopefully, and all that good stuff. Those kids will be able to look back on our Facebook, they'll be able to look back on our photos, videos, and see as close to a real embodiment of who we were at their age.
For sure.
In the quality and resolution that has never been seen before.
Right.
So
we're a new species. And so but that's kind of my whole thing in life is like, what we were talking about whenever you started your blog and your video blog and everything is you have this craving to share what you've seen. There's a part of us that just wants, if we see something that we think that other people can benefit from, we crave sharing it. And so that's what motivates me, like, to just, I feel like I'm onto something. And I feel like I just literally have a craving to let everyone know. It's a weird, coming back to the animal feeling thing.
It's interesting, right? I don't know if you ever heard of Dr. Jordan Peterson.
By name, yes.
Yeah. He talks about that, the importance of having direction in life, and I think you're right. There is sort of an animalistic component to that. Sort of striving towards something, reaching towards something, and I guess going back to sort of the small town aspect, before I lose the thought, I don't know what you'd recommend to an up-and-coming artist who perhaps has skills, but maybe they haven't gotten the affirmation from their peers to sort of have the confidence to say, okay, I'm going to get out there and just try. Because I think we talked about it before we started filming, there are many components to doing anything, right? We consider ourselves specialists, but if you're going to be an artist, you have to drive what you're making. You have to show people what you're making. You have to showcase it.
Right.
What was your sort of entry into all of it, or were you always sort of sharing your works with your friends, always sharing your works with your family, and did you just plug in as far as the professional side of things go?
Yeah. See, I was always so encouraged. I grew up in an incredible challenge nurture ratio. My parents are both extremely loving, but they're polar opposites. And so my dad's really into music, extremely eccentric, kind of like I am. My mom is like the sweetest lady. I love her. She's like, my love sweetness part of, I'd like to say is.
Oh, okay.
So I was always so encouraged by my dad in almost like a whoosh way, and my mom in I love you, can't go wrong.
So he was disciplined, and
so
she was
it
right.
was a crazy challenge and nurture ratio that I had just in my family system. I understand not everybody has that.
That is true.
But I think there's a challenge nurture ratio you can internally impose on yourself too. Which is kind of, as I'm older, I'm not listening to. I talk to my parents as much as I can.
Of course.
In that area, that's not the role they play anymore in my life. Now it's up to me to impose that challenge nurture ratio. And so, but as far as a small town, I would just say use that as an opportunity. Like one of the lines of the book is weakness can be strength. And it's get good, become the best in your small town, and then go to a slightly bigger town, and go to a slightly bigger town. Because that's kind of what my mentality literally led me to Loophole to Happiness, is from playing in bands, because I was in a band and we always talked about, we don't want to have a small town mentality. And we always talked about that, and then we got to Austin, and we're like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, this is a small town mentality now. And we got to Dallas, and this is a small town mentality now. And then I was like, and then we started playing out of state. And so then I was like, where does this stop? And so then that's what literally started making me thinking in all known and unknown space. So I literally went from thinking, because I was thinking in a small town, but now I think in as far as like literally all known and unknown space.
I love that sequence of progress though, because it makes sense. It gives you defined metrics to say, okay, maybe I'm shy, I'd love to have my own channel, I envision the end, but look at all this gray area. Okay, like you said, dominate, do well in your small town, you've already got people there, then move to a bigger town.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're going to go to LA or New York or wherever, and then you're going to be able to be like, I'm just as good as these people because I've been practicing, and then whenever you practice, it's good to be around people that are better than you too, but it's also good to have people that look at you and be like, oh my God, what are you doing? Because what that does is when you perform to somebody that looks at you that way, it actually allows your frontal lobe to work more. Like you don't have a defense mechanism going on. It's like it's weird. It's part of our animal hierarchy. So it's actually good for you to play for an audience of 4-year-old or something. They're gonna think just because you can hit a drum, you're a good drummer. Every once in a while, and it's like it's a weird like thing that I've just been playing with more than actually talking about, but just the understanding because it's helped me just like when I'm talking about Loophole to Happiness stuff. I now have really good friends that are PhD in psychology. That has a PhD in psychology. Darren Martin, he's an incredible author, speaker. I have David Henderson, who's a psychiatrist, and so I'm around these guys, and like they're peers to me. Like or not peer, that we can talk. But then I go to somebody that looks at me like everything I say is just brilliant, and for some reason I can just talk like.
So it's fuel basically when.
I think it has to do with the observer effect. You think about and you read you project what they're thinking about you, because you think that their expertise gives you. And so all this I noticed it whenever I actually first started working with Bowling for Soup, the band Bowling for Soup. I toured with them for a while, and it was the first band that I had seen on MTV and all that stuff. So I had this matrix of memories that made me think that they were something. You know what I mean? So I started working with Jarrett, a really good friend of mine, a really great guy. But I was so intimidated by him that every time I talked to him, I just rambled. It was the weirdest thing. But then I go talk to like Tony, which I don't think any less of Tony. I think Tony is an incredible guy. But then we just talk, and I just like it's nothing. But then you go up to somebody you're just slightly just.
Sort of maybe starstruck by?
Starstruck or submissive almost in the hierarchy. That's what that feeling is almost, follow this guy.
Oh.
And so when you're that way, you can't be, it's the evolutionary mechanism, so you're not as much of a free thinker, I think, so you're more of a follower. So you follow this dominant, but
I see what you're saying, right. So essentially you lose some of your thoughts because you're sort of on this track.
Yeah, and when you're thinking about what they're thinking, and that takes thought calories away from you.
I like that idea of thought calories, yes. Because sometimes you get so wound up in trying to do the best that you can, or in doubts, and you never get anything done.
Yeah.
You're sort of stuck in this thinking phase, in this mental gridlock, where instead of just taking action and saying, you know what? How about this? Let's say I'm going to pick up a new hobby, I'm going to go into archery. Instead of doing research, how about I just pick up a bow, right?
Yeah.
Just shoot at a target somewhere. I don't know. Learn on the fly. Learn while you do it.
Yeah.
A more stressful example may be public speaking. You think, man, I don't want to get on stage. I'm scared. Get up there, and you know what? You might have hiccups. You might not do so well the first couple times, but you learn as you go.
Yeah. One of the concepts I really like was one of the books I'm working on is it's actually in this book. Failure is an ingredient of progress. And it's literally an ingredient of the recipe. Like, if you don't fail, that you don't see your blind spots. You don't want to see your blind spots when you're already up here. Like, if Loophole to Happiness or if anything blew up and I had attention on me 7 months ago, while I'm trying to sell this book about being happy, I wasn't ready for it. You know what I mean? And so, I don't think, that's the way I see it. But now I am, because that downtime gave me the opportunity to be patient zero in everything I'm working on. So I went out to my family's ranch for like a week, and I listened to the audiobook 100 times at least.
Just to be sure, yep.
Well, and just to reprogram myself, because that's the whole concept. We have this opportunity to train ourselves to think, without having, there's a lot of books that help you do that, and they're incredible. My personality profile, I don't like to read, which is why I wrote a book that's 585 words. So you can, the audiobook's 18 minutes. It's going to become on vinyl.
Cool.
Yeah, but the audio, it's 18 minutes the way it's paced, so it has a soundscape to it. But at times a casual mile if you're walking, because I love to walk. And so if you're walking, you listen to it, it's about 18 minutes. According to Google Maps, is about a casual mile.
Nice.
Yeah.
Bit of math in the sort of the backstage planning of it all. Oh, that's interesting. And to bolster your point, I think you are right. There was a documentary I watched. I don't know if you're into pride fighting or the UFC or anything like that.
Very interesting to watch. I'm not like a super fan, but when it's on, I watch it. Yeah.
Right. It is very fascinating to watch. And there was a high-profile fighter called Mark Kerr. You might be familiar with. His nickname was the Smashing Machine, and he never made any mistakes. He was this 265-pound wrestling just force of nature, and he would fly through all of his opponents until he met a Russian man who he fought that essentially ended up beating him. Later on, it became a disqualification, all that. But the loss, the mental loss, even though it wasn't a real loss, it was technically a draw. It weighed on him so heavily that the rest of the documentary focused on sort of the decline, just from that mental aspect. And he went from this powerful monstrosity to sort of, eventually a man who just departed from the sport altogether.
Yeah.
And just left it. So
yeah, you gotta develop calluses where you need to, and that's what all the challenges as you ascend are there for. It's like you need to know, like being what is it? It's a skill to not be offended. Is one of the lines in the book, because you have to practice it. It is offensive when you're offended. For a reason. It's not like you're just like, I'm just so easily offended. It's like you have a fighting chance against this whole thing. It's like it's a skill. Just practice not being offended. It it hurts, but like just get over it.
It does hurt. Yes. It's funny you say that, because that seems to be the common sort of answer to a lot of those things, right? It's like, it's gonna hurt, but you gotta do it.
Yeah.
You're into the gym. Oh yeah, I want to gain weight. You're gonna have to eat. Oh man, I'm not really hungry.
Right, yeah.
Sorry, dude. You have to eat.
Yeah.
So it's gonna hurt. It's not gonna be fun.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be fun. But as you alluded to earlier, when your existence is sort of padded and you've always gotten your way, it's hard to sort of see the value in that. And go, okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to take some discomfort. Maybe I can't, go through this without some sort of pain.
Yeah. I think it's really, really good to just. I've really gotten a lot out of traveling, and I know that's not as easy for everyone else to do, but just being around different people was one of the most valuable experiences of my life. To go from Japan to New Zealand, Chile to Rome to and you see we're all the same. And then one of the lines in the book is traveling reveals optional, because it reveals the optional things in life, like hot water. I went out to St. Croix and went scuba diving for a week, and electricity is really expensive down there. And so I was staying with my cousin, and he's just the kind of guy that he's a penny pincher, in a good way, which is why I'm working with him on my stuff. But so he didn't have the hot water heater on, because they just got used to taking a moderately, mildly cold shower. And for the first shower I was like, you start to but then it's a thought experiment. So then just start to think about this as not shower water, but from a waterfall. And the context of that water makes it colder than it really is. So if you're out in nature and you just go under that would feel amazing.
And it would be cold. It would be just as cold.
Expect this hot water right now. It literally is the expectation thing. That's what expectation is, the root of all heartache. Is one of the things that I think. It's because you just it's just like the comparison. Expectation is all the same.
And it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a great segue into Europe, because I definitely want to get your take on that. And there are for sure expectations going into that, but I've heard in conversation that the social life is emphasized more out there. Is that something that you felt while you were out there? And if so, how could you implement that out here? Because that's something I've been actively trying to do, is sort of create this idealized social life I picture where my phone's always ringing and I'm talking to multiple people and my kids are going to grow up with multiple perspectives from having always visited with different families and friends and, you know, professional connections.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the history. I mean, we're capitalists, like we're rooted in capitalism, which is very competitive. And then, like, you know, a lot of those are more socialists and have a lot of history of war where they had to help each other socially. And I think the balance of that social time is more important to them because evolutionarily they have historically gotten more out of being social.
Oh, right. So it's sort of, because out here you're right. It is sort of a mark. Yeah, independence. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so I think it's literally just carried over from our history like everything else does. And but I love Europe. I think it's amazing, and you know, if you even want to babysit into like just go to the UK for a while because you can still speak English.
I love to.
Like, you know, so but even when you don't, like I went a few months without being in an English-speaking country, and ironically, it was funny. The first English-speaking country we got to was Scotland. And I could not understand. I was having an easier time communicating because I just adapted. Because every new language you go to, you're just like, bathroom? Where do I go? Like, you learn these rudiments of language. And then you understand, you get functional. And then once I got to Scotland, I was trying to just actually speak again. I could barely understand their accents. Like, it was kind of funny little thing.
But going back to what you were saying, you knew we're all the same, and so therefore, you know, sort of the human graciousness. You know that you can find people who will help you, not just with directions and immediate needs, but helping translate, helping sort of.
That's kind of the advantages of like our human structure is like we actually feel better when we help people.
Yeah, that is very true.
And so there's a game I played, it was kind of a concept I'm working on, it's the art of the ask, and it's when interests align. And so if somebody's really busy and you ask for direction, that they don't have time in their perceived life to like help you.
Yes.
Right? And so that interest doesn't align there. But if you're casually walking, somebody walks along and they need to know something, you'll literally get your phone out and see if you can find them if you have time. A lot of people will. You know what I mean?
It's been my experience too.
Right, and so it's just literally it's funny. It's like we want to help each other, and there's also an interesting whole concept when you ask somebody to help you, or if they help you, they feel like they've invested in you, and so now they actually feel more. It's interesting.
Oh, I see. So by helping, they feel like they've developed some sort of rapport. Right. Okay. Right. More than just a rapport.
Yeah, not
right.
necessarily.
Exactly.
But like just they've invested something in you, whether it's just a favor or whatever.
I see.
It actually makes them feel closer to you.
Oh. In other words, great way to make friends. Help someone out. Maybe that's why volunteering, in my experience, I've met a lot of people, right? Because you're working towards something together.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to like align vibes, is work towards a goal together. You know, volunteering is a great way to do that because you're all just trying to help. It's like, what can I do? Maybe take those chairs over there. I would love to.
Collaboration.
Tell me what to do next. And like you know, that's cool. It's a great, and you meet people. It's just like going to a church or going to a AA meeting or whatever. You meet people that are in the same culture that you're trying to pursue.
Right, that relate and understand.
I want to be around people that want to help people. You know what I mean? It's like those. You know, it's cool.
No, that does make a lot of sense. And it looks like wow, we've actually got an hour. Flew by.
Oh wow.
Fantastic. Yeah. No, it has been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the next projects. I'll be keeping an eye.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you for your time, Will.
Have a great one.
Take care, you too. Thank you. Until the next.